No, yeah, and that like on a like I totally understand on a logical level that makes complete sense. And I've had this conversation with myself, like if if they choose not to, if they don't like me because I put a boundary and then they're not worth my time and energy. So like on a certain level, I fully I get it.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, so that's where we got to move more toward, because I think at the end of the day, there's a piece in there where is, do you like you? You know, and that's for all of us. Like, I think that that's kind of what we come up against is, if we feel good, if we like ourselves, whether or not other people like us diminishes the value of that.
yeah, and I think like I have, okay, so I have such I don't want anyone to take this the wrong way, but like I have such a, I do not enjoy rigid people.
Mhm.
Rigid people drive me nuts. And so I think I try, like I never want to be come across, I never want to be like rigid or like so like, oh, this is how it has to be. And so I think I almost lean like to the other vast end of the spectrum in terms of um trying so hard not to be like, I want, yeah, I never want someone to see me as like, so it's almost like I'm trying to avoid being a certain type of person. And in the process, yeah. So like I do value like that, like I do value flexibility and like people that are a bit more flexible and like um spontaneous and intuitive instead of just like, well, I haven't like, I can be here from here to here, that I got, I don't really ever want to be like that. So um I guess it's trying to find like something that fits with my personality, but still um I'm able to take care of myself at the same time. Yeah.
For
So
sure.
yeah.
For you, you know, yeah, I definitely think that whatever boundaries you put in place should be something that you want to do, because, for example, to go back to the conversations, because you have this sense that you want to leave a conversation, but then you have this sense that you can't, and that there's
Yeah.
jeopardy.
When I can feel I'm mentally drained. Like I can feel myself like I'm drained,
Yeah.
and I know like I have to,
Yeah, so that's not about being rigid or changing who you
no.
are. I think that's about, okay, I want to give, but I also want to be able to stop giving when I need to.
Yeah, like I'm tapped out.
Yeah, yeah. So I think you should practice. Try to psych yourself up for it ahead of time, and then practice it, and then kind of evaluate how you did. You know, like, how long did you let that conversation go on in your head before you said you had to go? Did you say you had to go? You know, and just take notes.
Okay.
A little like ending the conversation diary, and then we next. Okay.
That's funny.
So
Okay.
did anybody get a chance to do the journaling? No. Okay. So let's do the personality test, and then we can do the journaling. You guys can do the journaling for next week. Does that sound good? Okay. So I'm gonna put the personality test questions. So what you're gonna do is you're gonna rate each one of these on a scale of, and I'm going to put it in the chat, of 0 to 10. And there's 15 of them. So, and if you could cut and paste that if you have, if you
So
can.
you want us to put it back in the chat?
No, I want you to cut and paste that into whatever you're on if you can, and then put a value on each one. So 0 is not at all, and 10 is totally or completely. Total those up, and you'll get one number if you add all of those up. So now there's a 16th question, but it doesn't go into your total. So you should have your total for the first 15 questions. Don't add this number in. But the question is rating your self-esteem overall on a scale from 0 to 10. 0 is I completely dislike who I am, and 10 is I completely like who I am. But don't add this into your total. What's your scale? 0 to 10. I completely dislike who I am. I completely like who I am. That's the 16th question, but don't add it into your total. So tell me your number when you have it.
8.
And Nancy, do you have a number for question 6? And Leah?
5.
So that number does not go in your total, right? So take your total and divide your total by 15. And then tell me what you get when you divide it by 15.
So mine's 7.36666666.
7.4, right?
Yeah.
Leah, did you get a number from your?
Yeah, 5.8.
And Nancy, did you get a number?
The same as Leah.
5.8. So if you notice your totals are very close to your response to number 16.
Mhm.
So Jody, you had 8 for 16 and 7.4 is the total of your other responses. And Nancy, you had 6 and yours is 5.8, and Leah, you had 5 and yours is 5.8. So and that seems to be consistent for people, that their overall evaluation is similar to the divided total. But what the questions can help you with is recognizing where you're strong and where you're weak, and being able to, not worry so much about the areas where you're strong and lean into those areas, So, I mean, this kind of goes back to this question of, do you really want to improve your self-worth and your self-esteem? And it's not a simple yes. And I don't think that even if your mind is saying, well, of course, it's something to really think about. And I'm going to add that to the journaling questions that I already put in the group, is to really, really write about whether or not you do, and it's not a yes or no, it's a part of me does, part of me doesn't. This is the part of me that does, this is the part of me that doesn't, and really kind of give them voice, and writing might be the right method for that, but it might not. It may be a conversation with yourself, like you may want to do an empty chair conversation where you put a chair across from yourself and you really kind of take good cop, bad cop, and well, I think so, and this is why I think so. Well, I don't think so, and this is why I don't think so. So whatever method, whatever feels right to you. If you feel like drawing about it would be helpful, but I would sit with it for a few days. This question of, do you really want to? And the other piece of it is, what will it cost you, right? Because we talked about this, Nancy, for you, it's a little more, it's an idea around, becoming something that you don't want to become. And then Leah and Jody, there's actual potential, fallout consequences from the people in your lives. But I think that it's when you're asking yourself that question, do you really want to, and what will it cost you if you do? It's the question of the real world potential consequences, but also that question of, well, if I think it will cost me my family, if I think it will cost me friends or relationships, or, this idea, even Leah, for you, it will cost me my flexibility. Well, it will cost me the type of person that I want to be, to really kind of dig in there. Well, where does that come from? And why is that important? Because it's like, it's all values, and you have to decide. It's not for anybody to say you should want it or you shouldn't want it. It's like you have to pull apart, what is it? What is this need? Because you all have a need to keep your self-worth down, right? You have a need to do that because of the things that have happened in your life, because of the identities and the messages and all of that. But right now, that need is stronger than your need to have a high self-worth, because you're all capable, amazing, beautiful women who do the things that you set your mind to. So the fact that you don't have a high self-worth is because that need to keep it down is greater than the need to have it. And so you have to pull all that apart and figure out, what is that need to keep it down? What could it potentially cost you? And are you willing to pay that cost? And it may be hypothetical, you may not know. And the answer may be no. And it's not for anybody else to say you should pay the cost or you shouldn't pay the cost, or, it's worth the risk or it's not worth the risk. But it's not about capacity, right? It's not about your capacity, because you've all done really hard things in your lives. And so it's about the need that need is stronger, for whatever reason, whether it's a limiting belief, whether it's a real life loss, the need to keep your self-worth down is stronger than the need to have it. And that either it needs to shift, and you need to want it more, and you need to be committed to it more, or you need to make your peace with it being where it is. Because you can't force it. You have to shift that desire and that need, and then the things to do to get it are not that hard. They're all mindset, thought related things that shift the way that you feel. But when deep down you really need to keep it the way it is, it won't shift. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
But does also, I just want to, the other thing that I want each of you to do is to pick your highest ones. And we can kind of talk about this a little bit now if you want. Think about, how can you encourage those aspects of yourself? How can you remind yourself about those aspects of yourself? Because those are your strengths. They're your acknowledged strengths. They're strengths you're comfortable with, right? So how can you bring them more out, both in how you feel about yourself and in your life in practical ways? And then pick your lowest ones. And I want you to imagine that you were helping someone else, and someone that you care for, to increase that. If it's a 0 to a 2, if it's a 3 to a 5, if it's a 5 to a 7, what would you do to support someone else? What would your advice be for them to help them increase their self-esteem in that specific area? So that you can imagine what because what you're going to tell them is what you think would work, right? So we could do a little bit of that Now you could each pick one, either a low one or a high one, and we could kind of talk through how do you lean into it, how do you accentuate it, or how do you increase it?
I just got like this, like, as a, my parents were never very good at like validating.
Yeah.
Like validating my, like all the things that I've ever done in my life. Like, I don't know, I can't even think of a time that like they told me, like, I'm proud of you. Like, you did great. Like, I don't know if either of my parents have ever actually just like said those words to me. And because I don't know, I never got that external validation.
Yeah.
I don't know how to internally validate myself. So like, it doesn't matter really, I could accomplish I could like solve world peace.
Mhm.
I still would be like, it's not enough. Like, I could do more.
Yeah.
You know? And I think I'm just that my whole like validation bank is just like bankrupt,
So, yeah,
like for me, like I have this belief that like no matter it's never enough. Like what I do doesn't, it's not worth it's not worth a pile of beans.
Mhm.
You know?
So that really falls into one in particular. I focus on my successes and not my failure.
Yeah, and that's why like that's the one, like that's why like I think I'm always so fixated on my failures, because my successes, like, yeah, like in the moment I'm like, oh wow, like that's cool, I did that. But
Mhm.
and like once it's over, it's just like I don't like, I'm not like, I don't continually be like, wow, like I don't really get anything. Yeah, like I'm not like, I don't feel like a strong sense of like pride, like that I'm proud, you know. So I just keep focusing on the stuff like, what more can I do? It's always like, it's like the cup is half empty all the time.
Yeah, so let's say this was someone else and somebody that you care about that felt that way, that their cup was always half empty. And from the outside, you could see that wasn't the case, right? So what would your advice for that person be?
I don't, I don't, like, yeah, like I'm not sure, like aside from like, I get,
Would you tell them you have to do more, you have to do better?
no,
Okay,
definitely not.
okay.
I
So,
don't know why, like, yeah, like my heart and brain are just so detached from one another.
mhm.
Like there's not the connections going on.
Well, but
Just
what you just said is probably a huge part of it. You said never in your life has either one of your parents ever said you did good on anything.
Mhm.
That's huge. That's huge, right? That's huge.
Mhm.
So the fact that you're going to separate out, okay, heart, you go hide over here and just let's not feel anything at all. And I'm just going to be up here, in my head, and I'm going to try to run away from that as much as I can. Why wouldn't you do that? That's what a strong, smart, capable, able person would do. They would get the fuck out of there, right? Emotionally. I mean, that's what they would do. So
Well, yeah. Yeah.
it makes sense, And the question is, do you want their behavior to define your relationship with yourself for the rest of your life? Because that behavior, I think, anybody would say it's not possible that you never did anything good. It's not possible. that a person from the time they're born until they're your age has never done anything good. So that's immediately identifies there's something wrong here, right? Because everybody has done something good. So if there's no acknowledgement at all, that's an issue that's clearly outside of you, right?
Yeah. And yeah, like I'm like in my head, like I know like I've done like, some pretty amazing things.
Yeah.
But then that connection, like it doesn't connect to my self. There's a set, like it's severed from my self-worth.
Yeah. Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
I think that you severed it to right? You severed it because the worth, when you're a child, your self-worth, part of it comes from inside, but a lot of it comes from outside. And so, and from your caretakers. And so if you feel like, oh, I'm doing pretty good here, and the message is not coming back, it's not being,
Yeah, that makes sense.
You're like, oh, okay, forget that. I'm not gonna continue to feel this way,
Mhm.
But the problem is then you always feel that way because you cut it off in
Yes.
that place. And so then
Yes.
you're stuck there, right?
Yes.
So, I mean, I think that it might be valuable to kind of do some of what Nancy was talking about and validate your accomplishments. Like I almost say for you, let's not write any of the homework that I put in the group. I would love for you to write out your accomplishments. And it may take longer than 1 week, but write out your accomplishments. You can either start now and go backwards or start little and go up. And after each accomplishment, I want you to write out, like if you were the mom of the person that did this thing,
Mm,
what would you say to
mm,
that woman, that teenager, that child, whatever age you were, and write it out like in as much detail as you can, the how you would acknowledge
mhm,
that accomplishment for yourself, and
mhm,
imagining that you're the mom, and what would
mhm.
you say? Because I think that could be really valuable for you
Yeah. Yeah. No,
for like your whole life. So you could either start when you're a little kid, the first accomplishment you remember having, and then really go heavy on the validation of it and take as long as you need and go all the way through your life, really writing out what did you do, and then looking at that, not that it's Leah, looking at this is my child and my child did this. How would I respond? And write it out as in as much detail as you can, your praise of that accomplishment as the parent.
mhm. Yeah. No, that definitely resonates. Yeah, with me.
Yeah, because
Yeah.
it needs to be done. It needs to be done. And clearly your parents can't do it and they're not going to do it. And so,
No. And yeah, and like I'm not blaming, like I'm not,
no, I don't care about them. Like that's
yeah,
not,
no, I'm not like I'm not blaming them. Like they have their own baggage, right?
yeah, but it doesn't matter, right? Because at the end of the day, that acknowledgement needs to be there, right? That acknowledgement needs to be there. So and I think what you've described, if they can't do it at all, they definitely can't do it the way it needs to be done. So
Yes.
for you to be able to really, see that with that acknowledgement, I'm just really sorry. Yeah.
My gosh, she's so sweet.
Okay, can I look at your nails after? You can't work them? You can't work with them? Okay, well, I'll help you as soon as I'm done. Okay, sweetie, can you close the door? Sorry.
Does she have like nails on?
we went to this arcade today and they played like mad games. They got 4,000 points, or actually it was more than 4,700 points, and they both got like little press-on nail kits.
That's awesome.
They both have nails.
I love your nails. They're awesome.
Beautiful.
So does that make sense, Leah? Can you close the door, please?
It does.
This bathroom.
It sounds like I won't like, it sounds like a lot of work. Like I'm gonna have to like really like sit.
Yeah, but maybe you take a certain amount of time each day and just
Yeah,
say,
you don't have to do, yes. No, that's,
take
yeah,
months, but it would be worth it, right? You know,
no,
I wouldn't
and
like
I,
keep through it either, you know, like if you take one accomplishment, you know, every other day, or, you know, like don't set yourself up for failure. Like this is
yeah.
really important.
No, and I think like I deep down I long to hear though, like I like as a young child, I wanted to hear.
Yeah. Well, and I would love for you to share them in here, you know, because
Yeah, like
being seen and heard, you know, I would love for you to bring them in and share with us so that
yeah.
you can be seen and heard.
But like, yeah, and I think like it even just affected like the way my identity developed, right? Like, you know, like as a parent, like, oh, you're so good at that, or like, wow, you know, and then a child goes like, oh, like I'm good at that, right? And so I just feel like I've had to navigate on my own, like what am I, you know, am I good at?
You may
And
discover,
it's shit, Albert, now it's shake, it's like I'm kind of just on this like this very shaky ground.
so that your ground may get more stable and bigger as a result of this, but you also may discover things that you abandoned because you didn't get that feedback and because you didn't have a way to recognize that that was a gift of yours. So, I mean, we'll see what comes out of it, but I think it's worth the time, and not as a burden, but as a
No,
gift
I get, yeah.
for yourself when you can't, you know.
Mhm.
If you can't, but when you can, you know,
Yeah, I'll chip away at it.
like carry a notebook or a journal with you, because sometimes, you know, we'll have to wait somewhere, or
Yeah.
you'll have different time where you could do some, and if you just have a journal or a notebook with you, then you could just take advantage of those, you know, 5-10 minutes here and there.
Yeah. No, I definitely see the value and worth in that. So
Cool. Nice. Yeah, so and we'll see how this kind of impacts your numbers, you know.
mhm.
Even just that one, because it's really coming up from one, but it may impact more than just the one. Yeah. Thank you. Does anybody else want to look at either in leaning into a high number or increasing a low number?
So my low numbers both were 5s,
Mhm.
and they were both around, like one was around handling criticism,
Yeah.
and the other was I love myself even when others reject me. And that, of course, this all goes back to childhood, right? So yeah, my mom was very critical. Yeah, it was hard to get positives out of her as a kid. As an adult, she's very different.
Yeah.
But it's how I developed my own critic right here that took over for my mom, and it's what kept me in line from being the bad girl. And just, you know, I was so critical of myself. That's where my perfectionism developed. Is, you know, if I was just better, if I was just good enough, then they'd love me. And so when they did criticize me, you know, it was all, I never developed my internal ability to sort of keep that out there and keep it in perspective. I find that when I do get criticism, in the moment I might kind of be able to stave it off, but then it haunts me.
Yeah.
and I ruminate about it, and I give them all the power, and I just think I'm a terrible person.
Yeah.
So that's sort of my 2 5s.
And do you do that with mistakes? If you make a mistake, do you, perseverate on it and not let it go?
Yeah.
So I would say a similar exercise with, kind of going back, either, chronologically backward or chronologically forward, and I would take them separately, criticism and mistakes separately, and give voice to that. Do you believe that it's okay to make mistakes?
I'm getting better at it. If you had asked me a year ago, I would have said, for me, no.
Okay.
For others, yes.
Okay.
As long as they use it as a teachable moment and move forward. So I'm pretty harsh around a period. I'm really harsh for myself, but I also know that translates into others.
Okay.
My poor students.
So I wonder about that in terms of, okay, so I'm going to give you a different assignment. I want you to do some research around that this week, around whether or not mistakes are good or bad, and why. And you can look at it in terms of science, in terms of psychology, in terms of life in general. But I'd love for you to look into whether or not mistakes are good or bad, or not either, and why. Because I think that you tend to respond to that kind of information. And I think that if you're not on board that it's okay to make mistakes, you can go through the motions of the exercise. It's kind of the same thing as if you want to change or not, but you can go through the motions and not shift anything. But if you find out what depending on what you find out, then we need to look at how your relationship to that information. Does it shift how you feel? Does it not shift how you feel? Why? So I think you could write about that too. When does it, if whatever you find out, does it impact how you feel about making mistakes? And also, what does it say about you when you make mistakes? What does it mean about you, not it, both in that situation and then about you in general, if you make mistakes now, not as a child, if you make mistakes now, how does it make you feel, and what does it say about you? And then do some research into making mistakes.
Yeah. I mean, like I said, like when I said like last year, if you had asked me last year, I would have said no. Now, and my head, it's kind of like what Leah said. My head says, of course it is. We're human. And it's actually when we make mistakes, it's actually where we grow the most. Like that's where the most potential is. So
Yeah.
I know all of that stuff. But when I get criticized or when I make a mistake, there's a gut, like in my gut, there's a gut wrenching, I'm a bad girl.
Yeah.
Mistakes equate to being a bad person.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But when I asked you if you thought it, you said that no a year ago, yes, more now, but for you, no, and for other people, only if they're using it for development and growth.
Right. For development, yes. I'm right, I did say that.
Yeah. So you are still conflicted.
Yeah.
And I think getting more broad in your looking at it, in terms of, because I think that it is, like there are jobs, there are places where a mistake, it can't happen. you know, so there is a, you know, so like, I think looking at a lot of definitions and looking at, you know, like a lot of, because I think that, you know, like with airplane pilots, for example, like, you know, they could, if they make mistakes, people could die, you know, there's a, it's not an easy question. It's not like, oh, yes, it's fine. Yes, no, it's not fine. But then like with science, you know, it's kind of like the deal, you know, like that's how discoveries are made, is through trial and error, and
Mhm.
the many times that things fail. So I think it would be good to just kind of, you know, like, don't learn anything you already know, but try to broaden out your definition, and then you know, look into more. Even now, you did say it's not really okay for you, and it's not really okay for other people. It's maybe as a tool for their betterment, but that there's still a pretty strong feeling that they're bad, that mistakes are bad. And so to just kind of like dig into that more, because then I think you can go back. If you can get to a place where you're more okay with it, then I think you could go back and um, look at situations and talk yourself through them. But I think if you're still you know, 70-30 in the camp of mistakes are bad, you know, then it's not going to be a very fruitful exercise, you know.
Gotcha. Okay.
Let's see what comes out of this for you, and then kind of go from there. Because it's not, you know, like going fast is not going to be as important as like really correcting things, you know. And so it's not, none of it's necessarily fast, but I also, the other question I had for you is, are you surprised at your individual numbers and your overall total?
Yeah, I was.
Yeah, yeah,
And I think, because as I was doing that, I'm like, really? Is that really my number? And I think what I realized in doing this is how much work I've done over the last 2 years and who I was 2 years ago. And when I did this, I've worked so hard over the last 2 years around trying to come to a place of loving myself and having compassion for myself, that doing this, I realized how much I actually have grown.
yeah. Well, and I also think that it points to how much of your not experiencing it is that fear of the loss of your family as a result of that, you know, that if you're an 8 or if you were a 10, what would happen, you know? And the,
Oh,
and
yeah. Sorry, I was just going to say, because I've already, my families have already said, like when I challenge my family at times, they say, like, one, either quit social working me, or two, you're treating me like a client. And what I want to say back to them is, quit acting like a client then. I'm just meeting you where you're at. And when I have to put my professional hat on to communicate with you, so there's not a huge conflict, so they already sort of um, indicate that I put myself higher than they are.
yeah,
And so I already get a little bit of that message.
yeah, yeah, and that's hard, and that's you know, that's where the you know, you have to find that, you know, like, and is there a way to own it in yourself and also acknowledge that they're not ready for that, and that you know, there may be a little bit of a, you know, like, I don't know, veil or something, but you know, can you feel it in yourself, even if you're not quite ready to you know, take it outside, because I think that's a, you know, that number's high, you know, like as an overall assessment, and as a you know, answer to all these questions, it's high, you know. And so I think that should, you know, like, it would be great if your internal self can acknowledge that, even if there's still not necessarily joy and celebration coming from the outside about that, because it's high, you know.
And how I see it as well is the more self-love I have, the more that will just translate for others as well. When I come from a heart place, because I love myself so much, I think that can translate so beautifully into just other people experiencing it from me.
I think it does in general, but not always with family, and not always with people that have expectations of the status quo, and have expectations of, it's other people tend to not experience you doing well as an indictment of them or them being less than, but that happens a lot with family, where when we do better, they see it as we're somehow saying they're not okay or they're worse.
Yeah, that is such a good point, Kelly. Absolutely. And I'm the scapegoat in my immediate family. And so if I'm getting better, then who are they going to scapegoat? So absolutely.
And that could lead to an even greater sense of like, well, who are you to think that you're okay? Because, you're the one that we all point to and say, you're the problem. So, yeah. So, and it doesn't mean that you have to do anything with them, but it's more about like, can you wear the 8? Can you feel the 8? Can you take the 8 to work? Can you, even if you just kind of like let that piece be what it is and not try to be all 80 around them, because that might be too much. But at home and when you're out walking and at work and at, other places, to like really wear that 8 and acknowledge that if you can't wear it with them right now, it's not because you're not an 8, it's because they can't handle it.
Yeah. So leave it out there rather than internalizing it, which is what I've been doing. I mean, this whole conflict I've had, I totally internalized their own perception of it, which is, yeah. Anyways.
But that's common, that we want people to acknowledge, just like Leah said, like that's an accomplishment, working on yourself, moving the needle on how you feel about yourself is huge. And then instead of being celebrated for that, you're the scapegoat, you're the person that people, and the interpretation is that you're putting them down, when you're not. And so that's all, but nobody has to be wrong, right? If you just say that's theirs and I can't do anything about that, even if I want to. But that doesn't mean that I didn't do this work. It doesn't mean that I don't feel this way. It doesn't mean that I'm not an 8, but I'm just gonna let that be and really like try to shine your 8 in all the places where you can, and inside yourself, to build it up, to really like have that be your external reality every place you can. And then know that you don't know what's going to happen with that, and you don't know that you'll ever be seen that way by your family, but that doesn't mean that it's not true. It means that those dynamics are complicated, and that they're they may not shift with you on that, and they may see you as a 4 or 6 or whatever, and that's okay, that may just be what it is, and it will limit their connection with you because they're missing out on big parts of who you are, but that's their choice if that's what they choose.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Nancy, did you want to pick one to work on?
Well, not really. Actually, it's because there's a lot of things moving inside of me right now. I realize a lot of stuff with all these questions.
Yeah.
And that it's Like I'm learning how to feel better when I receive compliments like from my boyfriend, because I know it's true and I know there's no hidden agenda. Because if somebody in my family would make a compliment on me, it was because they would use it against me afterwards. So it wasn't safe to receive compliments, and they would laugh at me and they would be mean.
Yeah.
And also, like, I had a 0 to I like the way I look, but I've been all my life criticized by my mom, and she said I ruined her life because I'm fat. And so I internalized all of that. So I've got some work to do there, but I am doing some, but I still got a lot of work to do on that.
Yeah.
And what we talked about in the beginning about me being terrified of becoming a narcissist.
Yeah.
Like, there's a lot of answers coming, and I watched a show today that was talking about narcissistic people, and I just remember that they have no empathy, and that is something that I've got plenty. I'm always doing introspection and watching what effect what I see is gonna have on others.
Yeah.
So I know I won't become like them, but I need to like sit and go deeper to get the root and extract that root and get rid of it once and for all. But it's moving. It's moving. I feel it all over my body. It's moving. Something is going on. But with all of that, I wouldn't want to be anyone else.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
I'm me, and I know where I come from. So having a 5.8 for me, 30 years ago, it would have been a -20.
Yeah.
Since I was so down and low and everything. So I've done a lot of work, and I'm proud of. Because I realized that, and the exercise you gave Leah to do, I did that exercise like a few months ago, and I had never had realized everything I had done in my life. It was the first time at 59, now I'm 60, but at 59, it was the first time in my life I realized I did some incredible things in my life. I almost moved mountains, but I had no memory of that, you know, and I put one after. I did it like by group of 10 years to, and after sometimes I'd say, oh, and I did that too. So I'd go back and add it. And so that really helped me a lot. But I still have so much work to do on myself. Oh, yeah.
I think though you're the to lean into that is really a good choice, because that is, you know, that's the most important one, because if you believe that, if you would rather be you, you know,
Yeah.
you can raise all those other boats, you know, because it all comes, you know, at the end of the day, that's so critical in terms of being able to have that self-worth. And I, you know, in terms of like the fears that you have, that might be something to write out more, like in more detail. What would, if you became them, what would that look like? And what are the reasons that you think you would, based on what occurrences, what aspects of yourself changing, or what aspects of like success, or what aspects of things that would lead you to that, and then why is that true or not true?
Well, actually, it's the self-doubt, because narcissists don't know they are. So sometimes I say, maybe I am and I don't know. So that's that kind of vicious little self-doubt, that I've got to write down and make like some affirmation and work it on another level, I think.
Well, and maybe also what you were saying before. So what are the characteristics, and can you show evidence that you have it, or show evidence that you don't have it? So for
That's what I'll do.
you have the empathy, so like, here's the characteristics of a narcissist. They have no empathy. Show evidence that you have no empathy, or show evidence that you have empathy, or both. Some, it's not all black and white. Because, I think that the giving of, just in this meeting, right? So you had an idea of how to support Jody in her understanding of the question that I asked her, and you offered that clarification. And then you had an idea of some herbal things that would not interfere with Leah's medication that she could take for anxiety and for her hormones. And not only did you offer that, you looked it up and you put it in the chat. And so that's like, taking your time and energy and thought process to support someone else. And is that something that a narcissist would do? Maybe, but probably only if there was a benefit to them, right? So they will do plenty of things, but there has to be a direct benefit to them. There was no benefit to you in either of those things. So that would be a good exercise. Go through and try to prove to yourself that your behavior and your thoughts and your feelings and your actions match, or they don't match.
Good. That's a great exercise. I will, for sure.
Okay.
Yeah. Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, great. So if anybody, it seems like these are much better individualized ones than the general self-worth ones that I put in the group, and we can do those at another time. But I would say in general, this list is a good kind of guideline for places to look for things to lean into and support in yourself, or things to look at how can you increase your assessment of your value in these various areas, because self-esteem, self-worth are so broad, yet these are really, broken down in a more specific way that's more actionable in terms. And I would always think of it as, how would I advise someone else? Because when we think of ourselves, we tend to go into all the reasons why we feel the way we feel. But when we think about somebody else, we think about, well, yeah, you might have had that experience, you might feel that way, but I know that if you do this or you do that, or you think about it this way, it will, you can shift it. And so instead of kind of going down your own rabbit hole, think about it in terms of how you would approach it with somebody else. And you may come up with good ideas for yourself.
Great, thanks.
So that concludes the bathroom meeting.
But I want to see your son's nails.
I don't know if he still has them on. Let's see. He might be asleep too. William, are you awake? You have your nails on? I want to see your nails. Come show him your nails. Yeah, he's awake and he has his nails on. So yeah.
Whoa.
They want to see your nails. You have your fake nails on? Oh yeah, you got to show in the camera though. See?
Yeah. Wow. Nice.
Wow.
Wow. And they stay on. They're solid.
Those
Wow.
are awesome.
After you push them a few times, then they just work.
Then they work. Nice.
Then they work.
Yeah.
All right. Does anybody else have anything they want to share?
That's good for now.
Just
Look at
wanna
that little
say-
monkey face.
Just want to say thank you, Kelly, for your perspective and your wisdom, and Leah and Nancy, just for being you and being so real and authentic and raw.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. We had a really, that was a lot of work. I feel it's a lot of work, but I feel it's so worth it. I move so much and I grow so much, and I really enjoy that. So thanks for being you, everybody.
You too. Thank you. All right. See you next week.
Okay.
Bye. Enjoy the rest of your trip.
Thank you.
How long are you gonna be there?
Till Saturday.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye-bye.